Long before the year 2000, long before a teenage girl ever stepped through its broken doors, this house was already feared. Locals called it cursed, some said it was haunted, and for decades it stood as a shadow over the small community that surrounded it. The house itself was built in the early 1900s by a wealthy landowner who vanished under mysterious circumstances. His disappearance was never solved. After that, tragedy seemed to follow anyone who lived there. Families moved in, but none stayed for long. Stories of strange noises at night, whispers in empty rooms, and objects moving on their own spread quickly among neighbors. By the 1960s, the house had been abandoned. Windows were shattered, the walls decayed, but its reputation only grew darker. Teenagers dared each other to step inside. Some came back terrified, speaking of shadows that seemed to follow them. Others swore they heard voices calling their names from the empty hallways. A few never came back at all. Local police dismissed most of these claims as superstition, the kind of ghost stories small towns often invent. But the truth is, records show several people were reported missing after entering the house. No bodies were ever recovered, no explanations were ever given. Just silence, and the chilling reminder that once you crossed its threshold, you might not walk out again. Neighbors described nights when the lights inside would flicker, even though the electricity had been cut off years earlier. Some said they saw a figure standing at the upstairs window, long after the house had been boarded up. Others claimed to hear screams echoing from within, fading into the night before anyone could investigate. By the late 1990s, the house had become an urban legend. Parents warned their children to stay away. But for teenagers, it was the ultimate dare, the kind of place you'd go to prove your courage. And that is what made it so dangerous. Because in the year 2000, one teenage girl decided to test the legend. She walked inside, and she never came out. Her name was Emily Carter. She was just 16 years old in the year 2000, a bright, curious, and adventurous teenager who lived with her family only a few miles away from the infamous house. Friends described her as fearless, the type of girl who loved exploring, testing limits, and never backing down from a challenge. But beneath her courage was also a kind and gentle spirit. She dreamed of becoming a writer, filling her journals with stories of mystery and adventure, stories that now feel eerily connected to the fate she would one day meet. On the day she disappeared, Emily had spent the afternoon with friends. They gathered at a nearby diner, laughing, sharing milkshakes, and talking about the things teenagers often do: school, music, and rumors about the haunted house that everyone in town whispered about. According to her friends, Emily was fascinated by the stories. Where others laughed nervously, she leaned in, eager to know more. She reportedly said, "It's just a house. Ghosts aren't real. I'll prove it." That evening, as dusk settled, Emily was last seen walking in the direction of the old property. A few locals driving by noticed her silhouette near the broken gate, carrying only a flashlight and a small backpack. One passerby, a retired neighbor, later told investigators he thought she looked hesitant at first. But then she straightened her shoulders and stepped inside as if determined to face whatever waited for her. The timeline of her disappearance is chillingly precise. At 7:15 p.m., she was spotted near the front entrance. By 7:30 p.m., a group of teenagers claimed they saw a light flicker inside the house, what they believed to be her flashlight. After that, silence. No calls. No sign of her coming out. Her parents grew worried when she failed to return home by 9 p.m. They began calling friends, retracing her steps, but no one had seen her. By 10 p.m., police were notified. Officers arrived at the property shortly after, but the house was still and silent. They entered, searching room by room, but Emily was nowhere to be found. Only her backpack was discovered, lying on the dusty floor of the entry hall, its contents scattered as if dropped suddenly. What's most unsettling are the eyewitness accounts from that night. A neighbor swore he heard screaming at around 11 p.m., though no one else nearby reported it. Another claimed to see a shadow moving in the upstairs window, long after police had already searched and left the building. Whether these accounts were real or imagined, one fact remained. Emily had vanished without a trace, and no one could explain how a girl could simply disappear within 6 short hours. By midnight, her disappearance had already shaken the small town to its core. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some believed she was kidnapped. Others whispered that the house had claimed her like it had others before. But whatever the truth was, one thing was certain: Emily Carter was gone. and the investigation that followed would uncover details far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. The search for Emily Carter began almost immediately after her parents reported her missing. At first, it was a desperate effort led by her family and a few neighbors, armed with flashlights and raw determination. They combed through the woods, called her name into the night, and circled the old house with growing dread. Her mother swore she heard faint crying from inside, but when they entered, the sound stopped, leaving only the creak of the rotting floorboards beneath their feet. By 10:30 p.m., local police had taken control of the search. Officers swept through the house methodically, but even their presence could not mask the unease that hung in the air. Several reported cold spots in otherwise warm rooms, while others described hearing faint whispers just beyond the range of their flashlights. One officer admitted later that he felt as though someone, or something, was deliberately leading them in circles. Despite their best efforts, they found no sign of Emily beyond her abandoned backpack. The following morning, search dogs were brought in. Strangely, the animals refused to go past the front gate. Those that were forced inside grew restless, barking at empty corners and refusing to climb the staircase. For investigators, this was deeply unsettling. Animals sensed something wrong in the house, something they couldn't explain. Over the next 48 hours, the search grew larger, but so did the strangeness. Flashlights malfunctioned inside the property. Radios crackled with static. Officers reported hearing doors slam shut on their own, even when the house was empty. Most disturbing of all, faint handprints, small, childlike prints, were found on the inside of windows that had been sealed for decades. Yet no trace of Emily herself appeared. With each passing day, tension in the community grew. Rumors spread quickly. Some said the house had taken her, while others whispered that something sinister, maybe even criminal, was happening behind its boarded doors. The local police, overwhelmed and shaken by the bizarre occurrences, contacted federal authorities for assistance. And soon, the FBI was brought into what was now being treated as more than just a missing persons case. The FBI agents who entered the house came prepared for a crime scene, not a haunting. Yet even they reported unease. They documented strange symbols carved faintly into the wood of the basement door, as though etched long ago. Broken furniture bore deep scratches, claw-like marks that no ordinary tool could have made. Pieces of shattered glass were scattered in patterns too deliberate to be accidents. And throughout the house, they noted an almost unbearable silence, broken only by unexplained thuds and whispers that never seemed to come from one direction. What the FBI collected inside was puzzling. Photographs of the markings, fragments of decayed fabric that did not belong to Emily, and audio recordings filled with static, yet laced with faint, chilling sounds resembling a young girl's voice calling for help. Was it Emily's? Or was it something else, something tied to the house's long, cursed history? Investigators could not be certain. What began as a local missing person case had now turned into a full-scale federal investigation, and though agents tried to remain rational, many admitted privately that the house felt wrong. As one agent later confessed, "We came looking for a missing girl. What we found inside that house made us question everything we thought we understood about fear." In the days that followed, investigators attempted to piece together Emily Carter's final 6 hours inside the house. With only fragments of evidence and unsettling testimony, they reconstructed a timeline of what might have happened after she stepped across the threshold that evening. Her abandoned backpack was the first clue. Found just beyond the entryway, it suggested she had dropped it suddenly, perhaps startled or forced to leave it behind in a hurry. Inside were ordinary belongings, a half-filled water bottle, a small flashlight, and a spiral-bound diary she often carried. Most of the pages contained her usual notes and sketches, but the last entry was chillingly different. Scrawled hastily in uneven handwriting, it read only, "I hear someone upstairs. Not sure if it's real." Investigators believe Emily explored the lower floor first. Scattered footprints in the dust indicated she moved through the living room and dining hall. At some point, she attempted to climb the staircase, though her tracks ended abruptly halfway up, as if she turned back suddenly. What made her hesitate? No one could say. But on the second floor, a far more disturbing discovery was made. Lying near the threshold of an upstairs bedroom was her flip phone. The screen was cracked, as though it had been dropped with force. When recovered, the phone contained a series of unfinished recordings, short, fragmented clips, each lasting only seconds. In one, Emily whispers, "I think someone's here with me." In another, a loud crash is heard, followed by her sharp intake of breath before the clip abruptly ends. The final recording, time-stamped close to 11:30 p.m., contains nothing but faint static, and what some investigators swore was the sound of a second voice whispering her name. No official surveillance cameras existed inside the property, but the FBI placed specialized audio devices during their search. To their shock, one device picked up faint sounds long after the house had been cleared. At exactly 2:14 a.m., a recording captured what appeared to be footsteps moving across the upstairs hallway. Yet no one was inside. The audio also contained a soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against glass, that continued for nearly a full minute before fading into silence. These discoveries gave rise to two conflicting theories. The first was criminal. Some investigators believed Emily was lured into the house, possibly stalked or abducted by an intruder who had hidden inside. The markings, the broken furniture, even the eerie recordings, they argued, could have been staged by someone with cruel intent. If this were true, then Emily's disappearance was not supernatural, but the result of human evil concealed within the house's legend. The second theory was far more disturbing. Many locals, and even a handful of shaken agents, believed Emily had encountered something not of this world. The diary entry, the terrified whispers in her recordings, the strange audio captured after she was gone, all pointed to a presence that defied explanation. Some said the house itself had trapped her, consuming her as it had others before. Paranormal experts called in later argued that the energy within the house was residual, a collection of suffering and tragedy repeating itself through time. In the end, the truth of Emily's 6 hours inside remains a haunting puzzle. What she saw, what she heard, and what ultimately claimed her will never be fully known. But the fragments she left behind, her scattered belongings, her unfinished recordings, and her final words on paper, paint the picture of a girl who entered a place of legend and became part of its darkest story. When the FBI began their deeper investigation of the house, they uncovered details that unsettled even the most experienced agents. What began as a search for a missing teenager quickly evolved into something darker, something no training manual could prepare them for. Hidden behind a rotting bookshelf in the study, investigators discovered a narrow passageway leading to a concealed basement chamber. The room was cramped, the walls lined with crude carvings and strange symbols scorched into the wood. Some resembled religious markings, while others were indecipherable, like a language no one could read. Scattered on the ground were fragments of old clothing, children's toys, and scraps of photographs too faded to identify. None of these items belonged to Emily, suggesting they had been there for decades, possibly left behind by others who had vanished before her. Documents found in a locked trunk only deepened the mystery. Inside were brittle journals dating back to the 1920s, written by the home's original owner. His notes described hearing voices at night, voices that he claimed guided him to prepare the house for something he never named. One passage read, "It does not want me to leave. It wants them instead." The final entry stopped mid-sentence, as if the writer had been interrupted or taken. Perhaps the most disturbing evidence was discovered in the upstairs hallway. Behind a wall panel, agents uncovered a series of hidden crawl spaces. Inside, they found claw-like scratches gouged deep into the wood, as if made by hands desperate to escape. Some of the markings appeared fresh, as though created only recently. And at the far end of one narrow crawl space, agents discovered a small piece of fabric torn from clothing. Lab analysis later confirmed it matched fibers from the sweater Emily was wearing the night she disappeared. The FBI collected every fragment, every scrap of evidence, but explanations were harder to come by. Official reports, heavily redacted when later leaked, described the findings as inconclusive. Yet off the record, some agents admitted the case defied logic. One anonymous source, speaking years later, confessed, "We found evidence of her presence. We found her belongings. But we didn't find Emily." It was as if the house swallowed her whole. Others within the Bureau pushed for a more rational conclusion. They argued the house had been a gathering place for cult activity, pointing to the strange symbols and journals as evidence. Perhaps Emily stumbled into something far more dangerous than ghosts, a hidden network of individuals using the house for unspeakable rituals. This theory explained the markings, the hidden rooms, and the disturbing evidence. But it did not explain how, despite all the searching, not a single trace of Emily herself was recovered. The official explanation remains vague. Emily Carter's case is listed as unresolved, her disappearance attributed to unknown circumstances. But the FBI's shocking findings, the hidden rooms, the journals, the scratches in the walls, paint a much darker picture. Was she taken by human hands, or by something that has haunted that house for generations? The truth lies buried in those files, sealed away from the public eye, and perhaps too disturbing for the world to ever fully know. In the wake of Emily Carter's disappearance, the small town was never the same. Her family was shattered. Her mother refused to leave the house for weeks, convinced her daughter would come home at any moment. Her father grew quiet, distant, his grief turning to anger at the unanswered questions. Birthdays and holidays passed with an empty chair at the table, a painful reminder of the daughter who had vanished into silence. The community, too, carried the weight of her absence. Neighbors who once dismissed the house as a playground for reckless teenagers now avoided even walking down the road where it stood. Parents warned their children more sternly than ever before. The stories that had once been told as dares around campfires now became whispered warnings, spoken with genuine fear. For many, Emily's disappearance proved what they had always suspected, that the house was cursed, that it demanded lives, and that stepping inside was a gamble with fate. The FBI's involvement only fueled the rumors. When federal agents left town, they offered little explanation to the public. Their reports were sealed, their findings never fully shared. Locals began to speculate. Why were the files kept secret? What had they discovered that was too disturbing to release? Some believed the Bureau was hiding evidence of cult activity. Others insisted the government knew the house was haunted and had no way to explain it. As for the official record, the case was eventually labeled as unresolved. The Bureau never declared it closed, but neither did they continue their investigation. To this day, Emily Carter's file remains open, collecting dust among thousands of others marked unsolved. For her family, this offered no comfort, only a cruel limbo, trapped between hope and despair. And yet the house remains. Decayed but standing, it looms like a scar on the town's history. Some say they still see lights flicker in its windows. Others claim they've heard a young girl's voice crying for help in the dead of night. Whether these are echoes of Emily's final moments or simply the fears of a haunted community, one thing is certain. Her story has become inseparable from the legend of the house. A legend that continues to grow with each passing year. The aftermath of Emily Carter's disappearance left behind more than just grief. It left behind a wound that never healed, a question that was never answered, and a warning that continues to echo. Once you enter the house, you may never leave. In the end, the disappearance of Emily Carter remains one of the most chilling, unsolved cases of the early 2000s. A young girl walked into a house of shadows and never returned. Despite exhaustive searches, classified reports, and whispered theories, her fate is still a mystery. What truly happened in those 6 hours is known only to the walls of that house, and whatever lingers within them. Was this the work of human evil? A predator hiding in plain sight, using the house's reputation as cover for unspeakable crimes? Or was it something beyond our understanding, something ancient that has claimed lives for generations? The evidence suggests both possibilities, yet proves neither. And that is perhaps the most unsettling part of all. Today, the house still stands. Weathered by time, empty but never silent, it remains a monument to fear. Locals still avoid its gates. Some say they've seen a girl's face at the upstairs window. Others claim they've heard faint cries drifting across the night air. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, one fact is undeniable. Emily Carter vanished, and no one has ever been able to explain how. So what do you think? Was Emily the victim of a hidden human hand? Or did the house itself claim her, as it had others before? Share your thoughts, your theories, and your questions in the comments below. Because in mysteries like these, every perspective matters, and sometimes, the truth can be found in the voices of those willing to search for it. This is the story of Emily Carter, a girl who walked into a haunted house in the year 2000 and became part of a legend that still chills us to this day.